Oh, rockumentaries. I really dislike them. They get these old farts waffling. Oh, the amount of drugs we took on the road. Oh, the amount of women we shagged. Oh, it's great, wasn't it? It's just a long procession of talking heads. Oh, I used to be their roadie. Oh, I used to live next door to the bass player's cousin. They always have that lugubrious keyboard player from that prog rock group.
Oh, yeah, XTC. I remember XTC.
Don't you dare have him in this documentary. It's always the same faces. It's always the same tales. It never has a good ending. They always fall out with each other. They're always suing each other. One of them dies, or two of them dies, or they all die. And they all can't stand the sight of each other anymore. Stop! The only thing that's worthy of making a documentary about XTC is it's not about the rock and roll bollocks that constitute 99% of other bands. We weren't into any of that rock and roll stuff. We're not rock and roll people. We made gently exploratory pop music. And I actually think we started pretty damn good and then got a lot better. And there's not too many bands can say that's their arc.
We're only making plans for Nigel.
The journey that they went on is extraordinary in terms of, you know, musical evolution. You have to look at a band like the Beatles to find anyone that's even comparable in the sense of reinventing themselves over and over again.
And all the world is football shaped.
I thought these guys ascended to, you know, from great punk roots to a whole other level. The leap forward they'd made to just gorgeous songwriting and gorgeous record making.
He's probably one of the most unique songwriters this country's ever produced. He's got this thing of just taking these melodies that soar, you know? It was kind of mind-blowing.
Each song is different to the next, let alone each album. It's hard to make one album different to the next, and they do it from song to song. And I think that's one of the reasons why they should be relevant, because they have never done anything that's expected. And that's really rare.
One of the things I love about them is that you can just sort of sit back and enjoy the musicianship and the beautiful sounds and these melodies. It's songwriting at its highest level.
Well, I never thought I was any good at anything until I got more and more into drawing and painting. Comics were a big influence. I loved them, and I thought, you know, I can draw. Maybe when I grow up, I can be a cartoon artist. I was a kid that always made my own entertainment. For me, it went with the territory of being an only child. It went with a very, very controlling OCD mother who wouldn't allow other kids to come into the house to play. You know, I could go around other kids' houses, but for some reason, they couldn't come in mine. This was her, you know, oh, I don't want any filth on the floor. You could go in everyone else's house and you'd know there were kids living there. There'd be toys around. You go into our house, no, there's no child lives here, you know. And she would constantly throw my toys away. It was like the OCD control thing, you know. It was a constant hurt to have your, you know, you had no brothers and sisters, you weren't close to your parents. The only things you kind of felt any connection with was your toys, and they were always got rid of. So I fought this de-childification of the house. You know, maybe it's why I love love toys so much now. I'm trying to say, you ain't gonna throw them out now, you know. I was a real Johnny No-Mates, you know. I had to make up games, I would design stuff, I would always be drawing. I was always a self-entertainer. And then I was the right age that psychedelia kicked in, 66, 67. Pop music starts getting very colourful. And right about that time, music starts to loom really heavily in my life. And suddenly, I was just opening up the age of, you know, your balls start dropping, the opposite sex stop being embarrassing and start becoming intensely interesting. It was all hand in hand with, I was just the right age. Girls are getting bigger, music's getting bigger, and kapow. And it's that thing of, if I'm going to get off this council estate, I don't think I'm going to do it by being a graphic artist. I don't want to have to join the Navy to see the world like my dad. What way is it that I can get out of here? It's got to be music. Can't be hard writing songs. The girls love them all. This is great. How do you learn to do it? I'm going to teach myself. I was struggling. I was copying as many records as I could. You know, pulling that stylus back. How does that bit go? Oh, no, what's that chord? I don't know what that chord is. I can't find it, you know. But I very, very quickly, for all the wrong reasons, quickly got into writing my own songs. And it's for the wrong reasons because I wasn't good enough to learn other people's songs. So, okay, you need to write your own. And that's how it grew. It grew because I couldn't work out other people's stuff.
Andy and I grew up on the Penilla Council estate. He was the next school year up from me, but we went to the same school. He was the guy that used to draw caricatures of the teachers in the playground, so he always had a crowd around him. He was a good draftsman even then. And then I didn't see him for a couple of years. I think I met him in a music shop, Kempster's, and he was the guy that used to take the expensive guitars off the wall, much to the proprietor's dismay.
You know, we'd go in and kind of turn on an amplifier and get a cable that somebody had left from trying a guitar out, and when nobody was looking, take a guitar off the wall and plug it in, you know, and then the pair of us would be showing each other licks and riffs and things.
Hey, you're Andy Partridge. You write good songs and play the guitar well.
That's right. Who are you, mystery bassman?
I'm Colin Moulding, and this is Terry Chambers.
You must be Terry, the drum player.
Yes, I am. I play the drums.
Hey, let's go to the pub and talk about being in a group, then.
Let's get pissed first.
At the time we met, when we were about 17, we still hadn't mastered our instruments, so we basically sort of like learnt really along together, but I think Andy was a little bit more advanced musically than what we were.
Well, he was a bolshy bugger even then, you know. Very confident, obviously very talented, so we were happy to go along with his ideas, really.
The stuff I wrote for the Helium Kids, I thought had its own sound because I was taking my love of American comics and science fiction, and I thought, I'll write songs about those kind of subjects.
The songs they were playing were all about maybe 2.5 minutes long, and no one locally was doing that. We were all kind of underground blues bands. That's really what was going on in the mid-70s. But this was some kind of, it's almost like cartoon pop music. But there was something about it that I hadn't seen in any other local band. I didn't seriously imagine they were going to get anywhere, because who's going to take a band from Swindon seriously? You know, it just wasn't going to happen.
Swindon has this reputation for being a comedy place, a backward place, that anything that comes from it is considered to be a joke. It's designated the comedy town. And everything associated with Swindon must be stupid and comical and worthless, which is terrible when you're trying to instigate a band from Swindon. They must be terrible and comical and worthless.
Locally, he was viewed as being a bit out there for local tastes, you know. But we thought he was great because he was a larger-than-life character, and he was very funny, and he was making music that was unusual, so we were kind of drawn to that. So the three of us, that was the nucleus of the band, me, Andy and Terry. and the fourth member always seemed to be changing.
By the time the Helium Kids became XTC, we found a keyboard player by the name of Barry Andrews, and we went out drinking one night and got awfully sick. So he was like, okay, he's one of the gang. He can hold his beer better than I can, you know, so he's in. I had no idea what he played like. And the first rehearsal we had with him, I thought, oh my God, we've said he's in the band and I can't stand his playing. It's like Deep Purple or something, you know. And I took him to one side halfway through this rehearsal and I said, do you really want to play like that, you know? Feel free to play any way you really want to play. And the second half of the rehearsal, it was, my God, it was like the sound of somebody repairing a flying saucer engine. It was just so odd, and it was so many beautiful wrong notes. He is so in this group.
We heard that there was a buzz about XTC, got to see XTC, so we went down there, and sure enough, they were one of the few bands of that era that dared to break the very strict rules of punk. XTC actually had complex chords, complex rhythms, lyrics that were outside that very narrow frame, and it was actually very heartening for us to see a band just throwing off that straitjacket.
Hello, my name is John Peel. On tonight's program I'll be playing tracks by The Sloot, The Slot, The Groan, Exploding Truss, The Blues Bastards, one from the Geckos, Hubert and his Pile Tones, The Ear, The Nose, The Throat, The Cazawaris from Hell are here, and Inevitable Groin.
I think Andy sent a tape off to John Peel and got us on the show. That was about 4 months before we were signed to Virgin, and that was our first appearance on the radio.
So, on to tonight's first guest, and they're XTC. See what you think.
At the time, the music industry was a bit of a closed shop. There wasn't really any way in. But when punk came along, it kind of swept everything aside. And we got in on the punk ticket, I think, but I think we were more akin to the New York Dolls. We weren't really punk as such. We certainly weren't political in any way.
Why don't we go to London and be famous, kids? Punk rock is just starting up and they'll swallow anything.
Science fiction that burns my fingers.
The floodgates were opened after the whole sort of so-called punk new wave scene. And, you know, as time went on, the labels kind of dropped away for a band like Blondie or for a band like XTC. You know, they were just like a great band. I mean, their music was innovative, lyrically interesting, and a bit eccentric, I suppose. And I think as time went on, they kind of proved that to be true.
By the time XTC got signed up in '77, and who didn't get signed up in '77, it was like a disease. Record companies were so scared of missing the boat. There's this thing called punk, new wave, whatever it is. We don't know what it's called. Quick, sign everything. They just signed everything, so they looked at XTC and, right, you're signed.
That first record is the one that, to this day, I love it so much. And I love the way it's like post-punky, and it's like, I really love that. His guitar playing, it's like that fast, erratic playing, and his singing. It's so cool.
So the first XTC album was some of the dregs of the comic stuff, like Neon Shuffle, Science Friction, but there were other things as well that were happening to me at the time, like This Is Pop, where people are trying to work out what this new music is called. Is it punk? Is it new wave? And to me, it was just pop music. It was short, sharp, slightly futuristic pop music. I thought, come on, you idiots, don't bother with putting it into yet another sub-ghetto. It's just pop music.
His singing voice, of course, on the first record, it was kind of yelping. Really, he was always trying to get above the row of the instruments. You know, it was probably the style of the music and the time where, you know, people thought to sing was to shout.
Yeah,
I very quickly realised that I can't find another singer who's delivering my songs how I want them delivered. So I'm reluctantly going to have to sing them, and I'm not a good singer. At best, in the early years, I managed an entertaining seal bark of a noise. You know, it's like a wounded lassie or something. And if Colin writes some songs, he's going to sing them. I'm not going to do his songs. So it was that kind of unwritten agreement that you write it, you sing it.
I had no ambition to write. I think it was one of the roadies that said, you know, Colin, you ought to write because otherwise you'll miss out, you know. So I made a contribution to the first album, and then on the second album, Barry said it would be better all round if we all made a contribution, and he started to write songs as well.
By the time we got to doing the second record, Go To, there was Barry's songs that had to be done, you know, give him a chance kind of thing. And of course they stuck out. You know, they weren't really band songs, XTC songs.
Barry and I were sniping at each other terribly during the recording of that, because I was seeing that he was kind of in danger of stealing my band away, or was trying to do that from under my nose. From suddenly not writing any songs, he had suddenly written 7 songs. But he was very upset that he didn't get them all on the album. But then you can't waltz into a band and say, OK, Mr. Songwriter, we're not having any of your songs. It's half of the album's going to be my songs, which I've just started writing, and you have to use them all. So I thought, well, no, let's give it a few albums, and then we can start to introduce your songs and so on. But no, Barry, being the lone wolf, had to leave. I thought, we can't stop our career now. It's just taking off. Who do I know that we can get in the band? Oh, I know, maybe the person we should have had in the first place, local guitarist Dave Gregory. You know, a friend of mine and fantastic guitarist. And yeah, I think he liked the opportunity to come and be in a band that was on its way up.
I think he just wanted to find someone he could relate to on a personal level, who'd do what he asked without squabbling too much. But he certainly broadened my mind as to, you know, how I should approach. For example, if he heard even the slightest hint of a blues cliche in anything I was doing, he'd just say, don't do that. So he got me thinking in a completely different way. On my audition, we were just jamming on something, and I think at one point I went, and he went, stop! Stop Ernieing! And I said, what? Stop Ernieing, don't Ernie, don't do that. Ernie. He hated that, so I had to sort of straight away, that was the last time I ever played a phrase like that in an XTC song.
When Barry left, it seemed to trigger something. You know, the dynamic of the band changed, and I was writing more for myself, you know.
Colin brought this guitar to the rehearsal room and said, I've written this song, fellas, and it goes like this. And he played the 3 or 4 chords that constitute Making Plans for Nigel. And we liked the melody, thought the melody was really nice. So, da, 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 da. You know, it's a very old-fashioned melody. Could be Gilbert O'Sullivan, could be, you know, of a show tune or something.
We're only making plans for Nigel. We only want what's best for him.
But he's strumming it to us on a classic guitar, and it was like, oh my God, we can't do it like that. He's like Julie Felix or Joan Baez or something, you know. We're not going to take that, let alone our audience, you know. And so we just pulled it totally apart. I got Terry to play an upside down drum rhythm where he moved a quite conventional rhythm around to other drums. And if you're a drummer, try playing that rhythm on Making Plans for Nigel. It takes some upside-down thinking.
I'm just doing these sort of stabbing chords. Over the top of that, Andy's got this little...
Colin is copying what is being played on the tom-tom, which is this tribal thing, because we want to get into that tribal area with drums, you know. So the whole song is this big tribal-sounding behemoth, and damn it, it was a hit.
We're only
I knew by that album, the album that became Drums and Wires, that I wanted to take the band in a more drum-heavy direction. And so we found a producer and engineer that I felt would be good for this new sound, which was Hugh Padgham Engineering and Steve Lillywhite being the producer. And it was a case of, well, let's get you in a live-sounding studio where there's plenty of stone and brick and wood and glass to reflect the sound. So we went to the brand-new Virgin townhouse, which had just been built.
The great thing with this room at the townhouse was that it was all sort of stone and brick. So when you stand next to somebody playing the drums, it's loud. And there'd become a phenomenon in the 70s where records tended to have a very sort of dead sound on, well, particularly the drums. And they often didn't sound very big. Now, recording them in this big room and the technique that I sort of discovered made the drums sound loud even when they were quiet.
That was the drum sound of the 1980s that everybody now knows was made famous by Phil Collins and the big drum break in The Air Tonight.
It was a new sound. It was a new thing. And people were saying to us, you know, like we're touring with the Police and,
Patsy, man, how are you getting that sound like with the big drums? Who's doing your engineering, man?
well, it's a young fella called Hugh Padgham.
Right, have you got his number? We'll have a bit of that on the Police, like.
Hugh Padgham came to us because of his unbelievable credentials. He had recorded the albums that everybody held up as the sound that every band wants. The combination of the size and clarity, everybody wanted that sound.
Drums and Wires just changed the game for us. Reinvented the band, easy to tour, easy to play on stage. Just put us another notch up the ladder, I guess.
It was a double-edged sword for me because certainly in Britain we'd had no chart success with this odd music, you know, these strange Herberts from the council estate in Swindon. It's too odd for me. That's punky, isn't it? That's, you know. So by the time that Colin came up with Making Plans for Nigel, Virgin Records said, hey, that good-looking bass player, he's come up with one and it's in the charts, so okay, he's the one to look at. And we thought it was Andy's group. From then on, for quite a few years, certainly in the eyes of Virgin Records, it became Colin's group.
I think he was a little bit pissed off, to be honest, as you can imagine, because, you know, he had been the songwriter, you know, the sole songwriter. He was the face of the band, so it all felt a little bit odd. Essentially, I was the bass player, but all of a sudden I was thrust forward.
Generals and majors are hard, they're never too far from battlefields so glorious.
To be fair, he's the one that looked most like a pop star. You know, all his songs were melodic and simple. They were easy on the ear, listener-friendly songs. So the record company would always look to Colin for the singles first. So you can understand why Andy might have had his nose put out of joint a little bit because of that. But, you know, we got on with it okay. He still had the lion's share of the writing and he was still in charge.
It was kind of good for him as well because it kind of spurred both of us on, you know. And Virgin were always after the next hit. So in a way, it was healthy after a while.
I had that thing where I thought of it as my band, you know. But I realised it was our band. The fact that Colin was writing good songs, I was writing good songs, Dave was playing great instrumentation, orchestration, Terry was whacking 7 bells out of that kit beautifully. It all made it stronger.
Andy was getting a reputation by this time as being, you know, a songwriter, as opposed to being, you know, a punk guitar player. Both guys were writing much better songs.
I think the two of them complemented each other, really. They never actually ever wrote together. They were never a Lennon and McCartney sort of type of partnership. They never wrote songs together. There was his songs, and that was it.
Colin had less of the kind of bite and perversity of Andy. Andy has this kind of strange world that he kind of retreats into that's kind of a mixture of nostalgia and sexual tension and the fact that it's quintessentially English.
I could only be tough like him, then I could win my own small battle of the sexes.
For me, more and more of the influences was the British pop group stuff came out more and more, i.e. the Beatles, Rolling Stones, the Small Faces, the Kinks, the way that Ray Davies wrote these little mini plays about life in England. You know, I loved that. And I sort of gravitated naturally towards wanting to do that myself. You're not stealing, it's just, you can't help it, it's in your DNA. You live in a little English town, just the very fact that you're reporting what's going on in that little English town, it's going to be a bit like anybody else who wrote about small things in small towns.
With Respectable Street, it's this really mundane, supposedly uninteresting story of this suburban, boring life, but they paint this really vivid picture of it, and you can completely see Andy just poking out the curtains, watching it all go on. He's such a character, and that comes out in the lyrics, that comes out in the songs.
As long as the four of us were together, we were in this little Swindon bubble, we were protected. We were among friends. Some of the weird people we met on the road, you know, you just think, well, at least we can laugh about it, because the rock and roll lifestyle is pretty absurd, particularly on the road. But, you know, Andy never stopped. He was always joking and larking around, keeping us happy. It was just his personality. It wasn't something he felt he had to do. He was just a natural, comical person.
Humor is the important part of every band's life, and we got on great with XTC. Andy was much more comfortable the further he was away from the show. After the show, Andy is a hoot. We actually shared a tour bus with them, which is 2 bands in a bus, which is pretty darn neighborly. But we got along really well. You know, XTC and the Police were 2 similar bands of the same age, and we just, you know, we were in the pocket.
I think we were generally pretty good live. Being tight as a band was important, but I kind of quickly found out that I didn't enjoy the business of live so much, for the travel or the sound checks or the assholes you have to deal with in agencies and managers. So I hated all that side of it. I mean, actually being on stage was the nicest bit of the day.
After we'd finished touring Black Sea, which was most of but second half of 1980, we were all ready to do something new. It was time to sort of expand the 2 guitars, bass and drums lineup, maybe add some piano here and there, and just think about maybe different guitar textures. So we went in and rehearsed songs for the album that would become English Settlement.
Virgin are telling us, yeah, nice material, lads, you don't have a single. And so I sat down and tried to write a single. Let me see. What's good? What do people want, like nursery rhymes? Yeah, it's got to be kind of simple melody. Counting's always good. That's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, that was a big hit. I can do counting. Well, flip it the other way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's about that? What have we got 5 of? 5 legs? No, we don't have 5 legs. 5 arms? No. 5 fingers? No, it's 4 fingers and a thumb. 5 senses? Okay, so it's going to be about your senses. Right, so it's a counting song. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's going to be stamp, stamp. You're going to get this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great, that's all working. I don't have a verse. And so I was thinking, okay, maybe the verse should be an E as well. And I threw my hands on the guitar, but instead of throwing them there, that's a nice E, I threw them on a kind of an E-flat place. And I didn't throw all my fingers on, I just threw 2 of them on, I wasn't thinking. And and I ended up with that. And I thought, oh, what's that? That's an interesting chord, non-chord. I thought, wow, I wonder what that's like if I move my fingers and go the other way as well. Oh, that's very nice. This sounds medieval. This is like somebody in a field tilling. This is a little fella and his ox, and he's tilling a field, you know. And so I started to sing with the nursery rhyme thing in mind. I thought, what would this person tilling the fields be? He'd be singing, hey, hey, the clouds are away. Yeah, I like that. I like, you know, he's looking up at the clouds, you know. And so the whole verse was made out of this kind of medieval, bloody evil, this medieval thing, which I then jammed on. I'm going to make this work. I then jammed onto the other bits.
Hey, hey, the clouds are away. The straw for the donkeys and the innocents can all sleep safely. All sleep safely. My son is mine. There's fodder for the cannons and the guilty ones can all sleep safely. All sleep safely. And all the world is football shaped. It's just for me to kick his face. And I can see him smell, touch, taste. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 senses working overtime. Trying to take this all in. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 senses working overtime. Trying to taste the difference between a lemon and a lime. Pain and pleasure and the church bells softly chime.
Halfway through an American tour, the woman I was married to at the time looked at a big tub of Valium I had. And when I finished a gig one night and went out drinking with some people in Los Angeles, she thought to herself, what's he taking this shit for? He doesn't need it, doesn't do anything for him. I'm going to get rid of him. Ooh, Freudian slip. I'm going to get rid of it. She tipped all these Valium down the toilet. I came home drunk to this grotty hotel room in Los Angeles. So I'm going to need my Valium. Where's my Valium? She said, I've tipped it all away. I don't want you taking this crap anymore. You got to stop this stuff. I freaked out. I thought, that's my crutch. What are you doing? I take that every day of my life. I've taken that every day since I was 12, 13, which I had done. I was on it in the first place because my mother had a lot of mental problems, and the fallout from that was really fucking me up as a kid, big time. And it was the 60s, and the new wonder drug, Valium. Yeah, oh, his mother's crazy. We're putting her in a loony bin for a while. Poor kid's upset. He's only 12. Tell you what, stick him on Valium. I was on Valium, addicted to this stuff since then. And here I am 13 years later, not registering that I'm addicted and thinking I can just stop. I had no idea how Valium addiction gets you, and I had no concept of getting off of it. No concept of cold turkey, no concept of this is going to destroy you if you do it like this. So like two naive idiots, she tipped it all away, and I said, okay, it doesn't do anything for me in any case. Doesn't give me a high, doesn't do anything. What does it do? Nothing. Great, I'm fine. I'm now off of Valium. Oh, what a fool. What a pair of fools, you know? Over the following year, I went into slow brain melt. I developed panic attacks. I had no idea what they were. Memory loss, my limbs were seizing up. My whole world was going wrong because of this Valium addiction, coming off of Valium, stopping dead. I didn't think to go to talk to specialists and say, how do you do this? Since people have said, hey, you come off of 13 years of Valium addiction, it's worse than heroin. And you try doing cold turkey on heroin.
I knew he was having these night terrors. I knew that he was very, very nervous before every show in the dressing room. You know, he would be so tense, and you just think, well, if that's what it takes to get him on stage, then that's what he has to do. But you never imagine that there's anything seriously amiss, other than just the natural, you know, tension of stage nerves.
We would get to just before the gig and he started our feelings of being sick and all the rest of it. He said, oh no, I can't go on, I feel sick. But it was just, I think it was just nerves, you know, which manifested itself in a physical, you know, psychosomatic way.
Just things came unwound. I was getting agoraphobia. I couldn't go out. I was getting panic attacks. No concept of what panic attack was. And I'm on stage and I'm getting a panic attack. Why am I afraid of everything in the known universe, you know? No concept of what was happening to me. And I found myself going on tour, touring around Europe, and then it was a tour of the States, and then it would have been Japan, Australia, blah, 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 wherever. Doing this with my brain just dribbling out of my skull. All these things going wrong in my mind and in my life, and me not knowing what they are. And I found myself on stage in Paris, having the mother of all panic attacks, and thinking, that's it, I'm going mad, I've got to stop the world. I want to get off, you know. I'm getting all emotional saying this. Yeah. Yeah.
We knew he was unhappy on that particular tour, and when he walked off, immediately we just thought, well, this is Andy being petulant and just doing this to make a point. Even when that happened, and I regret to this, you know, looking back at it now, we should have paid more attention to what he was, how he was feeling. We just figured, well, let's get him home, rest for a month, and then we'll go back out when he's all better.
We'd had this tour set up in America, and we had to get out of town fast because once the promoters knew that we weren't going to play, you know, they were saying, well, we want a doctor to come round. And I remember Andy and I were just packed on a plane and we shot back to England. But financially, we lost hand over fist, you know, because we weren't sued, but we had to pay a good deal of money over in order to pacify the promoters, you know.
I probably reacted a bit unsympathetically towards him, I suppose. You know, I mean, I was a youngish fella there, and geez, you know, to pull out of an American tour is pretty big stuff. And yeah, I wasn't aware of like it was like an illness, like, you know, I wasn't aware of that. I just thought, you know, he's just going through a bit of a bad patch and he'll get over it.
My brother Ian was our agent and their agent. And the first I learned of the stage fright issue was my brother Ian freaking out, saying, I can't believe it. We have the best tour. They're starting their tour, I think at Madison Square Garden or something. It was just the tour. This is, boys, you've worked hard. This is your payoff. You've landed. And then a phone call from England is that Andy just won't.
The sad bit is, I think, that he went from not being able to do it to not wanting to. Or that was his story, that he said he didn't want to. I mean, Andy being one for not allowing anything to kind of say he can't do, I think he turned it round a bit to say, well, I don't want to do. But maybe if he'd have got counselling for it, it may have changed things, you know.
I was just at the end of my tether with everything. I was at the end of my tether with being a performing monkey for management. I was sick of not seeing any money for all this. In all those years of touring, the band never saw a penny. I know who the villain in all this. I'm not going to get into all that because it's too rockumentary. But I know who the villains are. But we never saw any money, and I was sick of that. We never saw any time off to be normal. I was sick of that, sick of hotels, the whole thing. I was trapped, and I wanted off that treadmill. I just wanted a normal life. I thought, no, I need to get away from this touring crap. If my music's going to get better, and therefore XTC's music, we need better quality songs, and I need more time to write more and better quality songs. Virgin took it so badly. So badly. Everybody did, you know, the manager. I think the band did as well. They thought, oh, that's the end of us, you know.
It got very frustrating for me and for Terry, because well, Terry just loves the road. He loves performing. He loves playing his drums. And me too, I don't really understand why a musician wouldn't want to work, you know, want to go out and tour and play.
We never really wanted to pursue the live thing again, you know, which really went against everything I sort of stood for, really. I mean, if you're a musician, to me, playing is what it's all about. Besides that, my sort of circumstances had changed as well, and my wife was Australian, and we had a small child.
So that on top of the non-touring situation, I thought, well, geez, you know, maybe it's time for me to move out.
I totally and utterly felt freed up. From stopping live, it was like, hey, let's get in the studio and use it for what it is, this creative tool. Let's use every tool in the studio box. We want some brass, we hire a brass player. We want this organ, we'll just get this organ in. We want mellotron, let's get a mellotron. We want to overdub this, change the speed of that. We can do anything we want, for God's sake. Why were we restricting ourselves to 2 colors on the palette just so we could do it live? That's insane, fellas. That's not how you grow.
The arrangements of the songs became more complex. We were able to use strings and stuff without fear of trying to reproduce it on stage. We didn't have that problem. We could go to town, really, you know, and we did.
For me, it was wonderful. It was like the blinkers came off. That's live, and that's... wow, there are all those other colours. I want to use them.
Awaken you dreamers, adrift in your beds. Balloons and streamers decorate the inside of your head. Please let's all out do it today. But don't let the loveless one sell you a world wrapped in
How I write a lot of the songs is I'll find a chord or a chord change on a guitar or on a keyboard, and I'm playing those, but I'm not hearing music, I'm seeing pictures. That's how I write songs. It comes usually from the synesthesic level. Synesthesia is where you get stuff mixed up. Someone will say a number and you'll hear a noise, or someone will show you a color and you'll think of a number, or you'll hear a piece of music or a chord, and to me it makes a picture. I'm going to just see if I can do the exercise live, as it were. Let me find a chord that I've never played in my life. Let me see. No, that's a bit rotten. Ooh. You see, that to me suggests a pool of like a puddle, like a pool of muddy water. So if I was working from the synesthesia point, the song would have to be involving this muddy water in some way. I've never done this before in my life. Okay, so not this song or what I'm about to sing or anything or say or the words or anything, but there is the muddiest of water. There is the deepest of pools. So to me, it suggests, that's a lovely chord, actually. I'm not going to forget that, but that's, I have no idea what that chord is called, or I've never played it before, but it suggests muddy water. That's how I write songs. It comes usually from the synesthesic thing. I wrote this song, Love on a Farm Boy's Wages, sort of about the romance of my grandfather and, to some extent, my father, working on farms. I mean, they had terrible lives on these farms. I was just messing around with a note of E and... Oh, yeah, that's nice. That's like the countryside, you know, we're on the farm. It's so important that you paint the musical scenery, to me. Then you can find the right lines for the actors to say. But if you don't get the correct scenery, you can't stage this. But it's a very personal song for me because it certainly, to me, it references my grandfather and my father.
Shilling from the fellow who brings the sheep in. Shilling from the fellow who milks the herd. Shilling from the fellow with the wife for keeping. How can we feed love on a farm boy's wages?
Somebody said, you got to hear the song Love on a Farm Boy's Wages. And I just thought, as good as XTC had been up till then, it was like a revelation of how the leap forward they'd made, you know, out of their punk roots into, you know, just gorgeous songwriting and gorgeous record making. And from then on, I was just a total fan.
Shilling from the fellow with the wife for keeping. How can we feed love on a farm boy's? Love on a farm boy's. Love on a farm boy's wages.
By that time, the hits had dried up, and I think we'd done a couple of albums that weren't particularly successful, and the scene was changing, so it was kind of the wilderness years for us, you know, just for 2 or 3 years.
There's a long tradition of whatever media you're in, writers do it all the time, but musicians do it as well, where you want to not be you, to go to like a costume ball as some other character, a masked ball. Wouldn't that be great fun? So in our case, let's make an album by a different band. So in 2 weeks, we wrote, recorded, and mixed the Dukes of Stratosphere's first record. So it was so much fun, I tell you. So much fun not having to be yourself.
We had more fun in those 2 weeks I think I'd ever had in a studio with anybody. We just put ourselves in the mindset of bands from the mid-60s and just find as much vintage gear as we can so we can get it sounding as authentic as possible.
It was very relaxing for the band because there was no pressure on them to be here. There was no pressure to do a hit single. And it was all their fantasies in making music to be psychedelic.
It was very good fun, and it did surprisingly well. The Dukes probably sold more than The Big Express, which was the XTC album of around that time.
Of course, it was all meant to be hush-hush, you know, don't tell anyone it's XTC. Everyone loved it. And people still do today, you know. When I met the Stone Roses and they asked me to do their record, they kind of said, "You are the John Leckie that did the Dukes of Stratosphere, aren't you?" And I went, "Yeah." And they said, "Oh, because that's why we asked you. We loved that record."
Dukes of Stratosphere was probably a direct predecessor to Britpop. Creating that sort of psychedelic 60s influenced music was, yeah, very unusual for the time. I think that album came out when in the early 80s or something. So that record was, yeah, definitely a precursor to Britpop for sure.
It opened us up to a new audience. It was a lot of kids that were sort of starting to get into, they were calling it like the Paisley Underground or the, you know, whatever. There was this new feeling of, hey, maybe 60s music is okay. And I think it gave us the feeling that we could tap into what we liked as school kids. I think we all felt more comfortable in ourselves, and we felt more comfortable in being this bridge from the 60s to the 80s. And hey, that's fine, you know. This is why we were then at that point where it was like, we're not going to deny any of our influences anymore. We're just going to let them all free.
Season cycle moving round and round, pushing life up from a cold, dead ground. It's growing green. It's growing green. Well, darling, don't you ever stop to wonder about the clouds, about the hail and thunder, about the baby and its umbilical, who's pushing the pedals on the season cycle.
By the time we got to making the Skylarking album, which I think personally is the next Dukes record, Virgin really wanted us to break big in the States and did actually say, if you don't let an American produce your next album to be, you're off the label because you're not selling enough records in America. And they said, you're gonna need a US producer, somebody who knows what Americans like and can find that in your music. Because I thought our music was pretty British. Okay, good luck. And they sent me a list of all these producers, you know, Arnie Dinkelberger the 9th and Ronnie Dangelheimer of the 14th and all that. I didn't know who all these people were. I'd never heard of them. So right near the bottom of this list was Todd Rundgren. I know who he is. I had an album of his one time. He's American, yeah, right. Oh, okay, so he produces, does he? All right, well, that might be fun. He's a musician. He knows what musicians are about. And I said to Dave, you know Todd Rundgren, right? Todd, yeah, I'm a big fan, of course I am. Well, how would you think if he produced an album? Yeah, let's go for it.
I was in my element, I couldn't believe it. Just being flown from Swindon over to the wilds of New York State, up in the Catskill Mountains there, surrounded by nature, working with a legend. That's the dream, you know? How much better do you want it to get?
That's really super, super girl. Are you super 7 seconds flat? And your friends are gonna say that's really.
He was a fantastic arranger, fantastic. You know, his arranging skills are really top-notch, which we needed, I think. But he and I just butted heads terribly.
Don't mean to be rude, but I don't feel super.
I think on this album he really met his nemesis because he was someone who was as sarcastic as he was, probably even more so. And Andy likes his pound of flesh when you're recording with him. If you haven't done 6 or 7 takes and he's wrung everything out of you, then he's not had a good time, you know. Whereas Todd likes first or second take, otherwise forget it, you know. It was just two different philosophies that met.
I have a problem with authority, and this is my band and you're not telling us what to do. But all the time this ghost voice saying, if you don't be produced by an American, you're off the label. So I just had to bear it as much as possible.
I would have liked Andy and Todd to have seen eye to eye and got along as friends. But, you know, you've got the irresistible force and the immovable object. That's really what the problem was. But Todd did the job he was given, you know. He produced the record. It was a hit record. It saved our career, no question about it.
Laying on the grass, my heart it flares like fire. The way you slap my face just fills me with desire.
In the States, they put the single out Grass, which is a Collins song, Then on the B side, they stuck Dear God. DJs around American radio stations, they'd play Grass, yeah, okay. And then they'd flip over, oh, Dear God, what's this about? And some DJs started playing, in preference to Grass, they started playing Dear God.
Dear God, hope you got the letter, and I pray you can make it better down here. I don't mean a big reduction in the price of beer, but all the people that you made in your image, see them starving on their feet, 'cause they don't get enough to eat from God. Can't believe in
Dear God, sorry to disturb you, but I feel that I should be heard loud and clear. We all need a big reduction in amount of tears. All the people that you made in your image, see them fighting in the street, 'cause they can't make opinions meet about God. I can't believe in you.
It was the old corny, our radio station's lit up like a Christmas tree. The calls in have just been phenomenal. People would ring in inevitably with either they felt exactly like that about religion, this is all bullshit, or, you're going to burn in hell, take this trash out of here, this English homo and his anti-God music, Some stations were threatened with bombing and stopped playing it. Some kid in an American school was so affected by it, he took his teacher hostage with a knife and insisted this record be played over the school PA system to all the classrooms continuously until this hostage situation ended, because this record said it spoke for what he wanted to say. And I got a hell of a lot of hate mail for that. I was going to burn in hell, and I was just a goddamn limey faggot.
Well, it's ironic that that song broke them through. Any record company worth its salt, which none of them are, by the way, would have said, well, don't, that's great for England, but don't try that in the States. We're a God-fearing country. So it was remarkable. It got banned some places, which I guess helped them, as it always does. But yeah, there didn't seem to be anything he wouldn't write about.
Their Englishness probably made them a bit exotic to the American market and to American audiences. And there's plenty of Anglophiles in the United States, so maybe their Englishness worked in their favor.
It became a student hit, I think, on the campuses and stuff and radio stations, across America. So, yeah, it saved our career, basically.
So suddenly our career in America really took off, but it was all accidental. It was because the B-side pissed people off royally.
It's you. Dear
By the time we get to doing Oranges and Lemons, they're all saying, wow, where's the next XTC thing? This is really exciting. That record, Dear God, we really want the next thing, And Geffen, our label in the States, are now reluctantly, they're selling records. They might be good after all. So we had a big budget shoved our way. And it was a very LA kind of, not an LA album musically so much, but an LA album in kind of sunshine and citrus fruits. And it plugged me straight into the sort of pop art vibe.
We were working in Hollywood. It's a big Hollywood production. And it sounds that way. It's got bells, it's got whistles. We had plenty of time, again, you see, 5 months in the studio, there's an awful lot you can do. We probably did a little too much on one or two of the songs. But again, it's a great album, a really great collection of songs. And I can say that as a non-songwriter, I can say that in all modesty, because I had nothing to do with the actual writing process. Quite a lot to do with the arrangements and the overdubs. But to come up with that many good songs, how many bands can you think of had that ability?
Well, the way that we
just think we learned how to make records. We didn't know all about that when we started, and because we didn't tour, we found out more about what the studio could do and how to arrange, and it's just learning, really. It's bound to change, isn't it?
That was one of our favourite songs. It's so complex, completely overflowing with ideas. It's wave-like, it pushes and pulls you in. And I think we thought that would be a challenge for us to cover it.
The lyrics are beautiful, the way the vocal rises and falls, and we felt we had a deeper take on a cover than most people usually give a cover.
We wanted to pay our respects to, one, that album, but also that song, because that song was buried in, I mean, among other really great songs.
Hang on, the Cure's version.
So unhappy, I think I'm going to kill myself.
He likes to play the jokester and does it very, very well. His grasp of accents is pretty damn good.
Smith's version.
That way, pull me into your hair.
That's his two notes.
That way, pull me out of your hair. We are within a promises, busy with planets cascading.
That was always going on in the studio. That was part of studio banter. Again, you can't shut him up, Andy. Once he's on a roll, just being idiotic and silly, and you know, he never stops, Andy. He never stops entertaining.
Right then, now try and look like Bryan Adams, as much as possible. Try and look like Robin Hood.
Gomez Adams.
1, 2. 1, 2, 3.
Well, it's no doubt who's in charge. Andy's editor-in-chief. But, I mean, what the other guy, what Colin, obviously with his songs, and what Dave's musicianship is ridiculous. It's stellar. But it's the songs. That was why I was there. Combination of the quality of the songs, and they were obviously cool people.
I would say that None Such is my favorite XTC album. That album is just lousy with masterpieces. But then every time I heard a new album, I was just like, really? Again? Where's this coming from?
The catalogue's really small, actually. There's not that many albums, and the journey they go through in that small number is amazing.
It's hard to push yourself and put yourself out of the comfort zone, but he does that on a regular basis, and I think that's why he's produced such a catalogue of fantastic work.
He can create great imagery and a great story. He's such an amazing songwriter that you can't really touch him, to be honest.
For me personally, Apple Venus, I think, is our best effort. It's just a real shame that Dave Gregory didn't stick around for the end of that. He left during the making of that. And it's, you know, it is bad when you have a limb detach itself. You know, when Barry left, it's like, there goes a leg. And then you get another leg and it works bloody damn good. Yeah, it works really good. This is even better than the first leg, thanks. And then, you know, Terry leaves, So we use session drummers, but some of those session drummers were certainly different than Terry. So that was an added bonus to that. Then Dave left, and I don't know if we ever recovered from that. But, you know, for a band, we had a hell of a long life. And most bands get 5 years if they're lucky. We had 30-odd years.
The legacy of the band is the great music that they made. You know, they evolved as musicians and as composers. And sure, from their beginnings to how they wound up at the end, there was a strong evolution of a great band.
I love the fact that they were kind of willfully unpredictable, but commercially, that's something that actually is suicidal. You know, how can you market a band where it's very hard to get a handle on what kind of band they are? And I think that's always been one of the problems they've had, but to me, it just made me love them even more.
They have got a reputation as not being well-known or credited as much as they should, but I think that XTC fans would be annoyed if they were more well-known, because it's our little secret, I think, with that band, and I kind of like that.
To me, people who know what they're talking about already do regard him as up there with the greats. I mean, look, we're living in a time when there's a certain percentage of the population that thinks Kanye West is a genius. I can't control for that. But I think the combination of the songwriting, the playing, and the record making is well-nigh perfect.
I'm stupidly happy.
Andy used to get his hair off something terrible when we weren't appreciated more than what we should have been in his head. But I think it's coming. I think, you know, that's partly why we're doing this, because, you know, the word is out, I think. You know, it's taken a bloody long time, but I think people are catching up and they're appreciating what we did, you know. It took an awful bloody long time.
I'm stupidly happy, like the words to that song.
Most bands, great, might get a little bit better and then they go off the boil. Or great and then they go off the boil. Occasionally, once in a while, once in a very rare while, you get a band that starts pretty good, gets better and better and better and better, and that's rare. And I think, and I have to say, I have to be immodest, we are the other band that did that.
Rook, read from your book. Who murders who and where is the treasure hid crow?
When I'm dreaming, I'm usually flying over the Marlborough Downs. I've got this funny thing, if I dream I'm flying, I usually have people there and they say, "You can't, can you?" And I say, "Yeah, watch." And I'm sort of strain a bit, and up I go, and then off I go over the Marlborough Downs.
Soar up high, see the semaphore on the washing lines, break the code of the whispering chimneys and traffic signs.
Life's like a jigsaw. You get the straight bits, but there's something missing in the middle.
And if you're up there, you'll perceive that my heart's here upon my sleeve. If there's one thing I don't believe in, it's you, dear God.
There's nothing in the world like a gold-skinned girl to make your bonsai weep and make your bamboo curl.
All the kids are complaining that the songs are too slow. All the kids are complaining that there's nowhere to go.
Avon Lady feels the creases when she manages to squeeze in past their caravans that never move from their front gardens.
We're working every hour that God made so we can fly away.
You may leave school, but it never leaves you.
Your heart is the big box of paints, and others the canvas we're dealt.
All around the world, every boy and every girl need the loving. The humble and the great, even those we think we hate, need the loving.
I'm immensely proud of XTC, and the other band members, people still say to me, "What do you think to Colin or Dave or Terry or whatever, you know?" And part of me loves them like the brothers I never had, the family I never had. And then a part of me really hates them like the family I did have. So it's a real weird mixture. There is nothing, or there was nothing, like XTC. It's a totally individual thing. It's not one person. It's the collective tension of all those people. And so the fact that we found each other and made this magical, joy-bringing vehicle, that's not supposed to happen, is it? And we did. We made this phenomenal, joy-bringing carriage for all the world to ride around in. Hey, have some fun, get in. Well, this is the bit I really hate about rockumentaries, in where they have the 2 minutes at the end where they say, it's usually a write-up, and they say, and poor Derek he's still working in the industry, and he's self-financed an album he's put out from home of songs he never did finish in 1966. And it's like, oh, God, you know, the misery of all this. The whole rockumentary thing bores the very buttocks off of me. So that's the end of that then.